Monsignor is an honorific form of address for those members of the clergy of the Catholic Church who have received from the Pope certain ecclesiastical honorific titles. These are granted to individuals who have rendered valuable service to the Church or who provide some special function in Church governance or who are members of bodies such as certain chapters. The title is never bestowed on those classified as religious in Catholicism. Although in some languages the word is used as a form of address for bishops, which is indeed its primary use in those languages, this is not customary in English. Monsignor is the apocopic form of the Italian Monsignore, from the French Monseigneur, meaning my lord. It is abbreviated Msgr, Msgr, or Mons. Monsignor is a form of address, not an appointment. Properly speaking, one cannot be made a Monsignor, or be the Monsignor of a parish. The title or form of address is associated with certain papal awards, which Pope Paul VI reduced to three classes, those of Protonotary Apostolic, Honorary Prelate, and Chaplain of His Holiness. Apart from those working in the Roman Curia and the diplomatic service of the Holy See, it is usually on the proposal of the local bishop that the Pope grants this title to Catholic diocesan clergy. The grant is subject to criteria of the Holy See that include a minimum age. Soon after his election in March 2013, Pope Francis suspended the granting of the honorific title of Monsignor except to members of the Holy See's diplomatic service. In December of the same year he communicated his definitive decision to accept no further requests from bishops for appointments to any class but that of Chaplain of His Holiness, the lowest of the three classes, and that candidates presented must be at least 65 years old. He himself, during his 15 years as Archbishop of Buenos Aires, never asked that any of his priests receive the title, and he was understood to associate it with clerical careerism. Grants already made were not revoked. Appointments to all three classes of awards continue to be granted to officials of the Roman Curia and the diplomatic service of the Holy See, and there was no revocation of privileges granted to certain bodies such as chapters of canons whereby all their members or some of them have the rank of Protonotary Apostolic, Honorary Prelate or Chaplain of His Holiness. Also unaffected is the association of the style with the office of Vicar General, an appointment made by the bishop of the diocese, not by the Pope. Without necessarily being a Protonotary Apostolic, a diocesan priest has the titular rank as long as he remains in office. Title and forms of address, although in some languages, monsignore, monsignor, monsi plus or minus or, and the like are normal forms of address for all higher prelates of the Catholic Church below the rank of cardinal or patriarch, including bishops and archbishops. In English bishops are not usually addressed as Monsignor, a title reserved in English for diocesan priests who have received certain specific honorary awards or who hold certain offices. The written form of address for such a priest is Monsignor or the Reverend Monsignor. The spoken form of address is Monsignor. Before the simplification of ecclesiastical titles in 1969, those of the lowest class were addressed in English as the Very Reverend Monsignor and those belonging to the higher classes were addressed as the Right Reverend Monsignor. The 1969 instruction of the Secretariat of State indicated that the title of Monsignor may be used for bishops. This is normal practice in Italian, French and Spanish, but not in English. The same instruction indicated that, in the case of bishops, reverendissimus may be added to the word Monsignor, as also in the case of prelates without episcopal rank who head offices of the Roman Curia, judges of the Rota, the Promoter General of Justice and the Defender of the Bond of the Apostolic Signatura, the Apostolic Protonotaries de Numero, and the four clerics of the Camera. The predicate His Lordship, or Your Lordship is, in English, used as a clerical title only for bishops. Classes of Monsignori. Until 1968 there were at least 14 different grades, including domestic prelates, 4 kinds of Protonotaries Apostolic, 4 kinds of papal chamberlains, and at least 5 types of papal chaplains. Pope Paul VI in his Motu Proprio Pontificalis Domus of March 28, 1968 reduced the grades to 3. Since then, apostolic protonotaries have been classified either de numero or supernumerary. Most of the former classes of chamberlains and chaplains were abolished, leaving only a single class of chaplains of His Holiness, a specifically priestly-sounding category. The three ranks established by Pope Paul VI are, in descending order of precedence, Apostolic Protonotary, of which two types were retained, de numero, supernumerary. Honorary Prelate of His Holiness, Chaplain of His Holiness. Before 1968 the appointment of a Privy Chamberlain expired at the death of the Pope who granted it. This no longer holds. Those listed in the index of the Annuario Pontificio as Chaplains of His Holiness continue to be listed in the edition that follow the death of the Pope, as after the deaths of Popes Paul VI and John Paul I in 1978 and after that of Pope John Paul II in 2005. Even since Pope Francis decided to grant no requests from bishops for appointments to ranks higher than that of Chaplain of His Holiness, existing members of all three ranks established by Pope Paul VI retain their membership. Higher ranks are still attained by virtue of membership of certain chapters of canons or because of being a vicar general, and new appointments continue to be made for officials of the Roman Curia and the diplomatic service of the Holy See. Ecclesiastical dress. The 1969 instruction of the Secretariat of State also simplified the dress of the Monsignore. Chaplains of His Holiness use a purple-trimmed black cassock with purple sash for all occasions. Honorary Prelates use a red-trimmed black cassock with purple sash for all occasions. The red is the same shade as that used by bishops. They may use a purple cassock as their choir dress for liturgical events of special solemnity. Supernumerary Apostolic Protonotaries dress the same as honorary prelates. As an additional privilege, they have the option of also using a purple furry willow, a silk cape worn with a red-trimmed black cassock for non-liturgical events of special solemnity. Apostolic Protonotaries de numero have the same dress as other Apostolic Protonotaries, but wear the mantelletta in choir and a black biretta with a red tuft. They are thus called Prelati di Mantelletta because of this distinctive item of dress. Other Monsignori, under legislation of Pope Pius X, Vicars General and Vicars Capitular are titular Protonotaries durante munere, that is as long as they hold those offices, and so are entitled to be addressed as Monsignor. The only privileges of dress that Pope Pius X granted them were a black silk-fringed sash, black piping on the biretta with a black tuft, and a black mantelletta. As a result of this they were in some countries referred to as black protonotaries. However, Pontificalis Domus of Paul VI removed this position from the papal household, even though the title of Monsignor, which is to be distinguished from a prelatial rank, has not been withdrawn from Vicars General, as can be seen, for instance, from the placing of the abbreviated title Mons before the name of every member of the secular clergy listed as a Vicar General in the Annuario Pontificio. Under Paul VI, the Secretariat of State set minimum qualifications of age and priesthood for the appointment of chaplains of His Holiness, honorary prelates and protonotaries apostolic supernumerary. However, it waived the minimum age limit for vicars general proposed for appointment as honorary prelates, in view of the fact that, as long as they hold the office of vicar general, they also held the still higher rank of protonotary apostolic supernumerary. For the same reason, the Secretariat of State did not consider it appropriate that someone who was already a vicar general be appointed only a chaplain of His Holiness. All these criteria have been superseded by the 2013 decision of Pope Francis to grant only the title of chaplain of His Holiness and to require even for this a minimum age of 65 years. See also, Catholic Church Hierarchy, Monsignor, My Lord. Notes. References. Bibliography, Baumgarten, Paul Maria. Monsignor. Catholic Encyclopedia. New York, Robert Appleton Company. Bowdoin, a Monsignor. Catholic Encyclopedia. New York, Robert Appleton Company. Galls, Duane LCM, Chaplains of His Holiness, St. Joseph Foundation, retrieved September 1, 2006 CS1 Maintenance, date and year, Heme, Bruno Bernard. Heraldry in the Catholic Church. Humanities Press. ISBN 0-391-00873-0. Kish, J.P. Protonotary Apostolic. Catholic Encyclopedia. New York, Robert Appleton Company. Secretary of State, Cardinal, March 28, 1969, Miranda, Salvador, ed., Instruction on the Dress, Titles and Coat of Arms of Cardinals, Bishops and Lesser Prelates, L'Osservatore Romano 2, 4, retrieved September 1, 2006. Latin text of the instruction, with an unofficial English translation. Noonan, James Charles Jr., The Church Visible, The Ceremonial Life and Protocol of the Roman Catholic Church, Viking, pages 315-6, ISBN 0-670-86745-4, Montini, Giovanni Battista Enrico Antonio Maria, Pontificalis Domus, On the Papal Household, Reform of the Use of Pontifical Insignia, Simplification of Pontifical Rights and Insignia, Washington, D.C. United States Catholic Conference, Italian, a euro, Pontificalis Insignia, Pontifical Insignia, Rome, IT, the Vatican, Italian,